Hello, everyone. A very good afternoon to all of you. I'm Shivani, member of the NHRDN Young Talent Council, and your host for the session today. Today, we are in conversation with two esteemed HR leaders on the topics of psychological safety and well being at the workplace. The COVID 19 pandemic put employee well being front and center of corporate India's agenda. A dispersed workforce that depended on a limited state infrastructure prompted the employers to step in and support through innovative health and well-being programs for employees as well as their families. A dramatic shift in the way we worked meant that inclusion, belonging, and psychological safety all needed to be engineered in a virtual environment. A responsibility that's been shouldered very bravely by HR teams across organizations. It's been 4 years since the world first shut down for COVID 19, and almost 2 years since we all began to move towards the normal again. In this duration, our understanding of what employee well being means at the workplace and how psychological safety needs to be engineered have both evolved. And today's conversation is intended to understand from leaders what we've learned through these years and where they see this journey headed. Our first panelist in this discussion is Ms. Sunena Kaul. She's the Director, Global ER and ALR, India and APAC at Qualcomm. In her role, Sunena is accountable for shaping a high-performance culture, aligning business structures, keeping the organization safe through high governance, and control the ecosystem within Qualcomm, as well as with the statutory bodies. Our second panelist is Mr. Praveen Purohit, Vice President and Deputy Group CHRO, Vedanta Resources Limited. Praveen drives the overall HR strategy and execution in the areas of leadership development, talent management, campus hiring, capability building, HR communication, and much more. He's also a key member of the Global HR Council, which is the apex body for driving all HR excellence across the group businesses. Thank you, Praveen and Sunena, for taking time this afternoon to speak with us. We are very pleased to have you with us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Shivani. It's our pleasure. It's our pleasure to be here.
Likewise. Thank you.
As we start, I just want to quote a study, just mention a study that Google conducted more than a decade back. It was called Project Aristotle. It was a study meant to understand what makes teams effective. The researching teams found that the magic was not in who made up the teams, but if there was an environment of psychological safety within the team. And I think this was one of those initial studies which put psychological safety at the heart of team success as well as business success. Taking from there, we just request you if you could reflect, both our panelists, at what was the moment in your respective businesses, in your experience in the industry, when you saw psychological safety becoming an important topic for the business, central to their goals for success. Maybe Sunena, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. Thank you so much for that. And I think absolutely pertinent and an important question at this point in time. So if I go with the turning point, I think organizations realized that fostering well-being was just not an HR checkbox. It's a strategic imperative. We saw tangible benefits in employee satisfaction, productivity, and of course, leading to business outcomes. So hence we made it a priority. And that is what really was a turning point for us. Also, interestingly, psychological safety wasn't really just a buzzword. It was more of a foundation of a thriving workplace. Now, if you really go ahead and just revisit the importance of a psychological safety in any organization. So to keep it very simple, think about it. You're part of a team working on, let's say, a new project or a new technology, or something which is very new and different, which the organization has not done. Couple of ways where psychological safety really plays out is one, let's say, brainstorming sessions, where you don't really fear judgment or any kind of a ridicule, or an instance where probably somebody addresses a radical approach, and instead of letting them down, you really kind of explore that route. The second is, of course, a culture of feedback, where you are safe, where feedback can flow so freely, it's constructive criticism, and everybody gets the opportunity to not only participate, but also appreciate. The third, which to me personally is a key, is in terms of vulnerability of admitting mistakes. Let's face it, there's an error that happens. You're not blaming, but you're looking at fixing them so that, mistakes happen. How do you learn from them is something which is crucial. Sometimes it also goes ahead and means means, challenging the status quo, which means that are you going ahead and really challenging the traditional ways of working? And let's face it, we've seen a lot of that. And can you safely do that without any kind of a backlash? And of course, last but not the least is, of course, leading by example, which means that, leadership and the behaviors and how they conduct themselves, I think goes ahead and is seen, and where vulnerability again is acceptable. So it isn't just a buzzword, it is foundation for a thriving workplace.
Thank you for sharing that. Praveen, how about you? In your experience, when did you see it become central?
Maybe Shivani, I can share with you my experience. When I was doing my internship about 2 decades back, I experienced then that this topic is so paramount, not in recent past. And I will give you example of one of the company, and I think we all know TVS Group, and that's where in south of India I did my internship. And can you believe they started something for the family long back? Of course, Tata and all those companies, we have a lot of examples. But when the employee used to leave the workplace, they used to ensure that they go along with some kind of food item and package to the family. And it
Okay.
chota example hai, but it all started long back, and it was a founder's mindset that when a person goes back to his home, his family, his the siblings, the children, they are looking forward to something ki papa kya leke aaya hai. And that kind of examples used to give a kind of comfort not only to the employee but to the entire family. And that's when I come to a point, and we will talk about lot example. I want to make it more pragmatic as we progress. See, end of the day, we are into the corporate world, and it's all about people. Today, I can talk to you that, in Vedanta as a group, I have 50, 60 locations. I have a capex of about $20 billion. I am coming into 3 new businesses, which entire India has not seen so far. I'm talking about semiconductor. I'm talking about display business. I'm talking about glass business. This is something which will take India to a different level of, scale altogether.
Mm.
And for all those things, it's very important that how do we give importance to this kind of service, and they are actually the business driver. And I believe long back, many of the company, they realized that that's the example that whichever company we see, Nifty 50 or Nifty 100, they have experience, they have done something behind that, and that's the reason the scale what they have reached now. Vedanta, of course, one of the example, and I can talk about it. For me, this is most important for the reason that I'm spread across the geography. We operate in remotest of the locations as well, and this becomes paramount importance. That how do we take care of employee, not only employee but their family, not only family but their business partner, those who are working with you. So I think it's a very widespread kind of thing, and there are varieties of the way in which we are carrying out whatever best we can do as an organization. But I think there are tools, there are a lot of practices, a lot of initiatives which companies are doing. We are also taking, but I think intent has to be there. The mindset has to be there. If you don't have the intent and mindset, तो वो हवा में तुमको जितनी बात करनी है हम कर सकते हैं. But psychological safety is all about your intent. आप कैसे, how do you want to give comfort to your people? And that comfort will come through many of the things. I know you have many questions coming up, and probably we will cover all those kind of things. But people need good financial support. मेरे को salary मिल रही है क्या? And I will try to cover some of the thing, wealth creation opportunity. What are you doing for my children education? Will the company take care of my children education? मेरे बच्ची की शादी का कोई ध्यान रखेगा क्या? If you answer to all those kind of things, believe me, your business, your growth, whatever capex, whatever kind of investment you have in pipeline, that will flourish. So maybe Shivani will talk more about it as we progress. That's just my reaction to your first point.
No, I think what I'm hearing in common, one, as you said, intent is very important, and one has to realize that, like you also gave the example, Praveen, there are brand new sectors that Vedanta is now leading into. Similar is the case in the tech world. Things are so fast and they're frontiers which we have never touched. Like you said, in an environment like this, when an organization says, look, I have your back, and like you said, I even have your family's back, you're likely to come to work with a little more mental peace and not fear failure or judgment. So I think we absolutely agree with the point that it comes from intent, and without intent, they're all just programs. Thank you for sharing that. You know, as I hear you both speak and as we read, a lot of large corporations in India have made great strides in the kind of mental health support that they offer to employees. They've gone beyond the traditional EAP mental health support that's available. Now, mental health support is also embedded within the health insurance programs. You have counselors in campus, you have champions within units. And it's just that the entire health ecosystem is now better geared in India to support mental health support. So that's great to see as consumers in the organization. But I think one of the criticism that a lot of us practitioners, especially in HR, continue to hear is that, look, these are all programs that you have in addition to what I do. Unless you change my immediate workflow, my team, or bring about major changes in my team, how I work with my manager, what's the work culture, these are all good initiatives on top. So I want to understand your perspective on how do you think we can make mental well-being, psychological safety part of the workflow so that nobody from outside another team doesn't have to necessarily impinge with initiatives. And if you've had successes or even lessons from trying to embed these values within how one functions on a daily basis, then we'd love to hear those learnings. Praveen, if you'd like to go first.
Yeah, sure, Shivani. I think, yes, you can make few things as part of your workflow. You can create a system in the organization. I think we all have done that. You have 24 into 7 helpline. People can connect with, the medical experts for any kind of support for themselves, for the family. I think, wherever we operate, we have best of the medical facility and hospitals. I think that's what people look forward to. During COVID, I think we all did something which is so extraordinary. We never thought that we can go to that level of kind of care what we can provide to our people. We could have done that few decades back as well, but I think it never struck to us, probably. And that situation demand, and we went beyond call of duty, and whatever we did is something so exceptional. uh, I think more than the workflow, of course, there are, for example, you talked about term life insurance, so powerful tool. Can you believe me? And still, when I talk to my counterparts, CHROs in the country, बहुत कंपनियों में नहीं है. But if you have that, can you believe it provide huge support to the entire family when you have term life insurance, and then when it takes care of any kind of unprecedented thing can happen to you. But I think it's majorly, it boils down to the kind of maturity of organization, to my mind, and the maturity of the managers and the leaders what you have in the company, how they want to deal with the thing. And that's where, Shivani, I will tell you, our chairman, it comes directly from our chairman, Mr. Anil Agarwal, and he says कि आप अपने लोगों को empower कीजिए. You will have to trust your people. You will have to trust your people. You will have to ensure that they take risk. And we don't want to have anybody in the system who don't take decision. It is nothing to do with the hierarchy. Generally, it's in our mind that decision can be taken only by leaders, those who are sitting in the meeting room. हमारे यहाँ पे हम वो culture में believe ही नहीं करते हैं. हम बोलते हैं even the person who is in shop floor, the young people, those who come from IITs and IIM, can you put them into the decision making role? Can they have their say in the decision making? I think that gives them the kind of real empowerment. They come with so many ideas and suggestions. Are you allowing? Do you have a platform where you can make those ideas and suggestions work? एक तो बोलने के लिए बोल दिया, but are you empowering them, or all those ideas and suggestions are getting killed? Because of the reason that nobody is there to even look into it. Nobody is there to address. Nobody knows. Even if it needs a kind of 200, 100 crore, 50 crore kind of investment, whom should the person go and ask? So probably I think you need to provide that platform. You need to have those kind of structure in place, but more important, a culture of empowerment, a culture where you have the maturity of system, maturity of leaders who encourages people. I think that plays very, very important role to my mind.
Sure.
Maybe Sunana, over to you.
I think very well captured. I think the one piece that I really want to acknowledge is that if you really look at in the past couple of years, it's really heartening to see large organizations in India who've really taken steps to support employees' mental health. Whether you call it comprehensive or customized employee assistance program, any kind of sponsored consultation, or the insurance coverages, as we really spoke about. I think they are, while they're essential, but I think the point which is actually, and Praveenji, I completely agree with that, is its well-being should be woven into the fabric of work, not just an add-on. Now, if I give you a slightly deeper perspective, I'm sure all of us have observed over the last couple of years, many employers have really invested more into mental health, well-being than ever before. I think when you really look at any kind of HR leaders reports or priorities coming out, we are really talking about well-being as a top priority. And there's a host of wellness things being planned, whether it's yoga, meditation apps, subscription. Darwin has so many offerings. By the way, time management and productivity trainings, etc., happening, asynchronous tasks, etc., going up. But when you really look at aspects of jobs for employees which really undermine their mental health, or the well-being as we call it, it's if you really see, employees typically cite feelings of always being on a call, unfair treatment, unreasonable workload, low autonomy, lack of social support. And interestingly, these challenges are not going to get reversed by any kind of a wellness program. And interestingly, these will, while they will target these individuals, but I think the sustainable impact is actually going to be a lot lesser. I think it's well-being is not a checkbox. It is a mind shift change. It requires more than a perk. It basically, if you really look at it, what we are saying is fundamentally it's a shift in how we work, treat each other, when people really get out there. And I think I read it somewhere that you can't really yoga your way out of these challenges, and I think that agreed. So while you're trying to address this burnout, but are you also trying to address what is causing that burnout? And having said that, I think a couple of things which have worked, and I know most of the forward looking organizations I've looked at, is really a systematic approach, which means either setting the tone at the top with leadership who are discussing their vulnerabilities and coming out to say what they're doing, really addressing toxic workplace behavior at times, redesigning policies which are probably inclusive, sustainable, flexi hours, including supporting individual learning growth. I mean, there was a time when we would just look at tech skills, but we are also now absolutely fine in case somebody wants to take up gardening or a ceramic painting classes. So I think it's also a stage where we need to rethink, the systems, processes, and of course, as we redesign work, let's look at that. And of course, the environment, which of course is key at the end of the day. That's what comes to my mind, Joanna.
Well, I think great lessons, Sunena, Praveenji, in terms of, like you said, going back to the first principles of autonomy. Are you contributing, meaning, getting enough rest, and all, like incorporating those principles into the workflow, ensure that one doesn't have to have a lot of band-aid sort of initiatives, and it's more sustainable, like you said. And I think it's great how, you've distilled it for us that instead of a lot of the fancy new tools work. It's great. The things out there to incorporate into the well-being workflow are absolutely wonderful. But they work only so far, and they don't go much further if the workflow and the basic culture fabric, like you said, doesn't allow for well-being. And I love how we are also not just looking at well-being as like an add-on. Like there's a tendency in our culture to think of rest as reward. But instead, how we need to look at it in everything one does, how one shows up at work, how we interact with each other, what kindness we show to each other, how that goes a long way in just ensuring everybody's well-being. I think it's great that we're taking those fundamentals away. I also want to call out in my next question a stat that we got from the jobs website Indeed. They had conducted a survey, and 45% of the employees surveyed responded that bringing their authentic selves to work, their fullest selves without needing to pretend in any way, was very important to their psychological safety and impacted their well-being as well. I want to ask this question in the light of the diverse groups of individuals who make up our workforce today, be it diversity across gender, age, neurodiversity, and even disability. In your view, what are some of those steps and initiatives that have been helpful in ensuring that members of diverse groups feel included and are able to feel their fullest selves at work? So, Rena, if you'd like to go first.
Sure. I think, as I answer that, I'd also want to take a step back because if you typically see, if we step into our professional role at the beginning of each workday, I think there's a sense that we have to step outside of ourselves. Maybe we have to leave certain key parts of ourselves really back home, which could probably even be dirty socks behind the door, or probably a loyal dog who's going to actually wait as we return. And I think there's also a narrative in our head which says that, hey, it's time to switch off the button on our authentic self, and we really need to show a very polished side of our personality, buttoned up, carefully curated. After all, it's work, right? It is what we expected to do. So instead of bringing our whole self to work, we of course bring a very different version, and it seems very normal because everybody else is doing that. Now, what happens is when we do that, and here, while I'm not calling out to a specific diverse group, I'm even including ourselves out there, what we're really doing with that is we're creating a compromised workspace for ourselves, our co-workers, our managers. And at the end of the day, what it's really doing is promoting really lower levels of performance, creative thinking, including social connections, which is really important. So a couple of things, for us, which really worked. I think the first and the, utmost thing is that, do you have an environment where people can express their true self, which is essential? And specifically, as you bring in these wellness programs, where you're talking about yoga, you're talking about Zumba, you're talking about, let's say, a cards club, Toastmasters, etc., are you really creating that environment, which is the key? The second is that really a safe space where people can really share their perspective and challenges? Now, that is a little different than bringing your true self to work. And I think most importantly, which really goes a long way, is the behavior that is really being modeled. And I think that's really which starts at the top, with leadership going ahead and setting that tone, and that percolating down to managers, mentors, and of course the leadership that you have, in case, of course, you're working in different organizations and how they're structured. I think as you show authenticity, that gets valued. Storytelling, of course, big one, wherein you are able to share, which breaks the ice and ensure that people feel a little bit more connected at work. And of course, you start with baby steps. But I think the most important for us, at least what I have seen over the years, is one, unconscious bias. Not to say that you're wrong or you're right, but to really talk about, are you aware? Because the moment, I think, change comes from a fact, the moment you're aware. So are you getting that awareness into your, literally into your weave and your fabric? The other is, of course, the cultural competence and inclusion. So which means that, do you really understand why is it important for somebody's authentic self to come in? So again, very baby steps, but I think that really goes a long way. So if you really see, we're getting back to the basics, but that is something which will really weave the fabric and go a long way.
Thank you for sharing that. That's true.
Maybe I can share one example in specific, but Sunana is, she has described it, articulated it so well, and I completely endorse what she said. Maybe I think, when you allow your people to do what they want to do, whatever passion, the aspiration, what they have, if they are hungry for that, if they are passionate about that, and if the organization can allow them to do that, I think automatically, next day or along the way, you will see the person coming, as an authentic person, doing his bit of thing, doing with a kind of, जो उसके मन में है वो करेगा. He will be so in terms of what he brings to the table, and he knows that this is something which is so close to my heart, and I want to do it, and the company is giving me. Nowadays, many of the organization, they fail for the reason that they want people to do what the company needs them. कि मुझे ये चाहिए इसके लिए आप ये काम कीजिए. But probably, are you providing required amount of training, the kind of empowerment, the kind of expertise, whether the person has or not? Probably miss out on those kind of things. But then still you want him or her to do that. But my thing is the progressive, the forward-looking organizations, and that one of the initiative what we have taken in Vedanta, it's working out so boldly. Believe me, we just started, a couple of quarters back, and it was a brainchild of our chairman, Mr. Anil Agarwal. He said कि प्रवीण आप लोग IJP निकालते हो, लोगों को बोलते हो यहाँ भरिए वो करिए, वो सब ठीक है, but you have about 100,000 people in your company. Can you ask them what they want to do? Can you create some system? This is just a thought. You are HR expert. You create a kind of structure what you want. But can you ask them what they want to do based on the passion, based what they are hungry for? And we as a kind of organization, we will provide them that opportunity. हम उनको वो देंगे. And give and take a chance. And take a chance. Believe me, we started this program. We called it as a We Desire. It's becoming one of the very profound, prominent program in Vedanta. And Shivani, you will be very happy to see in the first batch about 150 people. They got through the entire structure. It was a very robust program. We had to run it in some way because thousands of people they applied for it. So you had to filter it. You had to do something. And 150 people, we gave them what they want to do, and they are making huge difference. Believe me, they are adding to the volume, they are adding to the cost, they are adding to the kind of whatever the business goals and objective you have. So I think that's the kind of thinking, that's the kind of initiative which can help people to, come forward with what they want to do. This is just one of the specific example and initiative which I wanted to share with you. बाकी जिसकी जो एस्पिरेशन है, आप अगर उनको वो करोगे तो वो बहुत खुश होकर नेक्स्ट दिन आएगा आपके पास. Otherwise, you are forcing them to come just because he is in need of money, he needs job, तो वो उसके लिए आ रहा है. But no, I think that cannot go in a very long run when you want to have an organization for next 500 years, and when you have a vision to touch $100 billion, I'm talking about Vedanta, then you need people who are dedicated, committed, who are passionate, and who bring themselves to the kind of, who don't talk of work-life balance. वो work-life balance की बात नहीं करता वो employee, वो बोलता है work-life integration. So I think that's the kind of mindset we need in the system. Shivani, over to you.
Thank you so much, Praveen, for sharing that example. And I was thinking, as an individual, when an organization sets up an initiative like this, it helps you break through what can seem like a very complex system, right? Like hierarchies, functions, systems. Where do I apply? How do I navigate? Who do I reach out to if I have a brave idea? So it's great when the organization reaches out and says that, hey, if you have something, we'll help you cut through the entire system, and we are listening.
You will have to be disruptive. Today's organization will have to be disruptive. If you start looking at the kind of traditional way of working, key band wise, this will be the salary, this is what the rating we will give, this is what will be your increment. These are all old system. Gone are the days. Today, believe me, the junior person is drawing, junior in terms of experience probably, the junior is drawing more salary and more incentive than his boss also. The world has changed. आपको disruptive होना पड़ेगा. You will have to mind those who come with digital technology mindset. I can't be so rudimentary in terms of that we know everything. Young people will have to be given chance. They know better than all of us in terms of the new age way of working, new tools, new techniques. So I think disruptive to hona hi padega.
True, and I think it's great to think that great ideas can come from anywhere in the organization. How do we remove barriers for them? Pete, I know that I have been asking questions, but there are a few we have from the audience as well. So what I'll do is we'll take one question as of now. So we have a question from Yatish Singh. Yatish, if you'd like to just unmute yourself, you can ask the panelists the question directly, and you can call out if you want one of them or both of them to answer the question.
Yeah, so my question is like, despite all the systems, process, tools, and programs we implement, there might be certain jerks in the systems or certain toxic leaders who may undo whatever you are doing on the other front. So how do you identify, correct, and rectify so that they don't do the damage and they don't disturb the psychological safety? That's the question I have. Any one of you can answer.
Right. I can probably pick it up. So I think when managers lack empathy or they fail to address any kind of employee concern or even pick up, the behaviors or the environment, or let's say, the gut issue really goes out. So imagine there's a manager who just dismisses a stress as a mere pressure without offering any support, or there's toxic work environment, or there are long hours, etc. So I think the first thing, again, I think what we spoke about is the fact is of awareness for a simple thing that yes, people, or because employers are looking at improving burnout without addressing the toxic behaviors, and let's face it, that's going to fail, which means that any amount of burnout symptoms, etc., will not go away if you have toxic behaviors which are low, and of course additional interventions would be required. Now, having said that, I think a couple of places where at least I've seen organizations have taken a call is, one is acknowledging. I think there is also a space where you don't acknowledge because the person seems to be in a position of power, authority. I think there are great relationships, etc., in place, and of course there's high stress level. So I think the first thing which has really worked for organizations who've made past that is recognizing recognizing the issue. The second piece where I see that, whenever you're talking about a relationship with a manager which could be toxic or could probably be concerning, it's important that they become part of the solution. There are times when either managers, when they're talking about their employees, they tend to take a back seat and say, hey, I've given feedback and they need to improve, and vice versa. So I think what happens is, how do you commit to that positive behavior? What is your role that you play? If you really look at, how HR is in any organization and how employees are, of course, we have scenarios wherein employees go ahead, call up probably a helpline. We have shared services model. We have places where policies are kept. But are you really part of the solution, or you feel that you've absolved yourself the moment you've gone ahead and raised a concern with anybody, including, your manager, HR, or in case you have a higher up, supervisor there? The other piece is also very important, is that there are times when, people are slightly concerned about reaching out. And I think most of the conversations happen when there's an exit happening. And I'm sure all of us have read it somewhere or the other, that people leave their bosses, they don't leave their organizations. Now, having said that, do you have any sponsor, trusted mentor, probably a trusted leader, where you can really talk about this misbehavior, which is there, and how many times do we see it? And of course, sometimes, and like I'm saying, in the worst scenario, of course, we do see, employees probably getting up in arms, and, where they are trying to show that the strength lies in the numbers, and that's how we want to take it. So I don't think that's a good place to be for any organization. And of course, change starts with the fact that you're aware and how you're addressing it. For me personally, the how really matters. And I think that's something we always continue to preach our employees.
Thank you. Thank you for that view, Sunena. I think those are some very practical instances that you've called out about, where well-being, psychological safety could get compromised and where we need to pay extra attention. I want to now also, related to this question, move to the other important area, which I said is about psychological safety, well-being, being at the center of business priorities. And I know to one extent we say that the conversation has come front and center. But at the same time, the way we evaluate impact for a lot of what we do to foster psychological safety and well-being in the organization is still in terms of use and experience and feedback we get from the employees. But if the conversation has to move any further, I believe it would be more important if this also gets linked to the larger business scorecard, the goals the business has towards its ultimate success, towards their measures. So wanted to, if there are any measures, methods by which you've been able to link the impact of what the organization is doing for employee well-being and psychology to its larger business outcomes that it's trying to achieve. And that way, if you've been able to bring more leaders, because leaders also have many priorities, it becomes central if it's also central to business. So wanted to hear your experiences on that. How has that journey been? And what do you think we need to do more to take that conversation forward? Praveen, if you'd like to take that.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I think the scorecard, each of the company, they have their own way of measuring things in terms of how their initiatives are running. And even for HR, we have something called HR scorecard, we call that. And that has a lot of parameter in terms of how we are doing, be it in terms of the productivity, be it in terms of the attrition, in terms of your employee engagement score. So I think all those, put together gives you a kind of good understanding how your initiatives are, coming up to a kind of level. And that numbers, when I compare with various group companies, probably that gives me a kind of internal benchmarking as well, that who is doing better in terms of what initiative, and is there any kind of learning which they can take from each other. So I think those systems are very well there in the place, and it's very measurable in terms of helping me to improve my processes and system. The larger point what you said, I think if your if your fundamentals are taken care, if your employee attrition, if you are very good in terms of the kind of compensation, if it is in line with the market competitiveness, if your productivity is very good compared to the global benchmark, whatever generally we see in our industry, I think all those things ultimately links to the kind of organization outcome. And that's what you see when in the quarter wise quarter your team makes a presentation to the investor, and when you say that this is what you have done better in terms of the production, or this is what you have done better in terms of the free cash flow, or the EBITDA, or whatever kind of key parameters which are linked to the kind of business goal. And invariably, if you ask me, the progressive company, the forward looking companies, if their basics are taken care, if the people agenda is intact, you will see a kind of good numbers quarter on quarter as a kind of business result. So I think the systems are in place. But again it boils down, शिवानी, जो हम पहले से बोल रहे हैं, इंटेंट क्लियर होना पड़ेगा, इंटेंट होना पड़ेगा, माइंडसेट क्लियर होना पड़ेगा. And I think we will have to be disruptive in terms of what we are doing if we want to make a difference, if we want to get into a kind of very at a very larger scale. We as a country, we are talking about 5 trillion economy, and for that everybody will have to come together and focus on this very, very important subject. And that's how it can happen. For example, you talked about diversity. Diversity not only in terms of the gender. I know I'm talking from the natural resources sector point of view. In this particular sector, we are much better compared to any of our peer group. But moving beyond that, gender is one part of it. We are very good when it comes to the kind of junior level. But what about the leadership level? What are we doing in that? What are we doing in terms of the transgenders? I think we have taken a very progressive stand. Even today in Vedanta, if you ask me, for me, diversity is when I hire 2,000 people from campus year on year, 2,000 people, it has to be 50% women. It has to be 50% women. And it's a very bold thing. It was 10, 15% few years back. We said that 10-15% se nahi hoga. Can we achieve 30%? When we achieve 30, we said we want to reach 50%. Today, 1,000 women from best of the premier college, they join Vedanta. Then we said, it's not only about gender. Can we have best of the experts and advisors, specialists joining us? Today, as about, people from 30 nationalities working with me as a kind of expats. They bring different perspective. People from, Kashmir to Kanyakumari, they are part of my organization. Today, I have 70 transgenders working with me in a very, very important role. Are we providing the right kind of infrastructure, the best of the role? And believe me, we did that, and they are adding amazing value, very impactful, value addition they are doing. So I think it's all about, putting together, and of course, the result will be there. You will see result in terms of the number what your organization achieves.
Thank you so much for sharing. Those are some, like you said, those are steps that come from great intent and an intent to follow through and make structural changes to be inclusive. So that's great learning for all of us. So Naina, your views on this as well.
So again, step back to leap forward. But I think we have taken, I think if I look at our careers when it started, I think if I look at India Inc. there and now, of course, we've taken significant steps towards promoting inclusion, employee well-being. And of course, you're right that the success measures are usually get, sidelined to either the utilization rate or the employee experience. Now, these programs, if you really see, are also managed by the HR team. Now, while it's essential to track these metrics, I think what's really important is the whole and a holistic approach, which involves integrating well-being into, let's say, the organizational fabric. So, when leaders champion well-being, employees are thriving, and of course, it becomes everybody's responsibility. Now, if you look at some of the forward-looking organizations, they consider people leadership criteria based on their performance management, and yet there is a sustainable room to grow when it comes to employees, employees providing transparency around the mental health or wellness objectives or matrix. We always shy away from that. Now, there's certain organizations, by the way, who are doing this really well, and they have set clear expectations, for their managers to lead in a way that is supportive supportive for their employees' mental health and well-being. Now they offer trainings, they look ahead and ensure that managers are able to identify, really proactively ask and listen to the employees' mental health and well-being needs. And also, I think most importantly, introduce mental health pulse checks or any kind of relevant questions into the broader employee satisfaction surveys, etc., which I think have now even started happening more often, to ensure there's a baseline to track the trends of how employees are feeling, and of course build on the mental health and well-being. Now these could be included in leadership meetings, which could probably be look at concerns, risk. I'm sure all of us have looked at an attrition tracker with different color codes, etc. How does it really look like now, and does all of this feedback really go in? I think one of the interesting measures that I see most of the organizations doing right now is also trying to marry it up with the employees who are returning to office. So if you really encourage leaders to kind of lead by example, model behavior, what at least I have observed is there's accountability, and there is some employers embed employee mental health and well-being into their reviews, where they really probably talk about the long term and the short term employee well-being objective. But I think a couple of basic examples that we would see on the ground is in terms of, one, are there fewer burnout cases and how are we tracking those? Secondly, I think as a team, do we really encourage our people to go ahead and manage a work-life balance or model a self-care behavior? I think the other is in terms of, do they have the flexibility to actually carve out their workday, or let's say as simple as take days off when they want to take mental health days, and they are not shying away from really just putting it under the garb of, let's say, a casual leave, sick leave, and how does it really become part of the workflow? So these are some of the things that at least I have observed.
So that these are such great examples of literally bringing it as a part of the workflow. And I think what I'm taking away from it is the importance of the role that leaders play at every step of the way, be it checking in, be it role modeling, demonstrating itself, clearing barriers that exist in the organization or in the workflow for an individual's well-being, about how those are so critical. I have one more question, and then we'll open up for audience questions, because we have a very engaged audience today and they have lots of questions to ask of you. So my question has two parts, and whichever one of you wants to can take it first. One is, what are some of the steps you're taking within your team as a leader to foster your team's well-being and psychological safety? That's one. And the second is, one commitment you've made to yourself for your well-being this year, and how are you following through on it? So, uh, Praveen, if you'd like to take it first.
Sure. Maybe I think I will take your second question first. What I am doing differently this year is, I have been doing it, but I wanted to, spend some more time. Morning time doing some kind of spiritual thing, and I do mala, chanting of mantra. So maybe I think it's something which was happening very sporadic. So maybe I thought this is one area probably I need to do better. That keeps you very calm. It gives you a lot of energy. It gives you a kind of self motivation, and maybe this one brings a kind of lot of well-being to yourself. End of the day, it's important how you. I like what Sunena said. Self-care is very very important. So I think many a times we will discount that, and it's very important that how do you take care of yourself with some of the very important initiative, and that's how you will be able to take care of your larger team. And now coming back to the team, Shivani, I think you will have to encourage your team, and everybody come to office when they have purpose in mind. And I strongly believe that when people look for purpose, when they see that their aspirations are taken care, that's the role of the manager. I think half of your battle is solved, and rest of the things are very very important as a kind of manager, as a leader. uh, and it is agnostic of any kind of sector, believe me. Are you taking enough time in ensuring that your people are growing? Are you providing them enough of opportunity in terms of fast tracking their career? Are you giving them more and more visibility when you have thousands of people across in the organization? Your teams are also very large. A kind of visibility is very important. People, they want to be part of, the way I said earlier, they want to be part of decision making. कि मेरा contribution कहाँ पे हो रहा है, whether I am part of the larger scheme of the thing what my company is achieving. So this is very important and you need to provide that. Number three, the way I said, salary is very important, but but now we need to move beyond salary. How can you help your people? And this is again coming back to psychological safety. Uh, how can you provide them a kind of wealth creation opportunity so that the employee is relieved? He knows that for my children, education is taken care, for my daughter, for my children, marriage is taken care. I want to build a beautiful home. That will happen through the schemes and incentives and the various policies what the company has, and all this thing has to happen beyond salary. Salary is something which should take care of your routine only, but for this three four big item which generally happens in the family, you need to have those kind of unique and wealth creation policies and system in place. And finally, of course, diversity is important. Quality of life for the people, those who are sitting in different remote locations. Are you providing them care? Are you providing them best of the schooling facility for the children in township, in the locality where you have? Do you have recreational facility? Do you provide them the required flexibility? Very important. When you have so many women leaders working with you, women talent working along with you, a lot of flexibility is needed. And I think you will have to think differently and provide those kind of thing in the system, and everything put together. I think that can make a very, very robust organization. Shivani.
Thank you for sharing. That sounds really holistic. So Nena, over to you.
So I think today it's not really enough for us as managers or leaders just to drive strong employee performance. I mean, which if I really look back, I think when we got out of MBA colleges, that is what we understood. But I think today they're also accountable for their team's well-being. And I think the traditional image of, a absolutely stoic, poker-faced, unfeeling leader is actively getting replaced by, professionalism that values this care, empathy, and actually inclusivity. And I think, and that's really leading to a space where, people want to work with leaders who either make them feel seen, heard, appreciated, supported. And I think they do want to see the leader or the manager more as a human. So I think that one key skill for me which really calls out and the nature of what I do is actually communicate with care. That's something which is very important for me, because I know people get work done, they execute, and they're very good at it. That's what managers do, I think leaders do. But I think it's, again, the secret sauce is really in the how, what you do it. And to me, that's communicate with care and not just communicate. So for people to trust you, you have to learn to live with vulnerability, openness. And when you open up about your own struggles, your storytelling, your opinions, it helps people practice similar behaviors to what you're saying. Like, for example, there are times when you probably get into a room and there's a directive from senior leadership to say, hey, this is what you have to do, a particular task, which may not be in alignment with your own thought process or opinion as well. But there are some times that you have to drive those objectives as well. So when you're a lot more open to have that inclusive conversation, by not, of course, creating any kind of a bad environment, but just acknowledging that, while we appreciate what the feedback is, however, at this point in time, this is what the organization requires. I think building that culture of openness, to me personally, is very important. And it also requires you to lead those conversations with empathy and probably use language in a way which is probably a little bit more inclusive and affirming. Now, coming on to, I think, one commitment that I've made to myself, again, self-care is very close to my digital heart. And as you can see, there's just a lot which is happening in that tech space. So I think a couple of things which which I am doing this year is, one, digital detox. It started off with 1 hour, not looking at your emails, and, the world's not going to fall. And second is, of course, scheduling breaks. So these are the two pieces which have kept me going for for the past 6 months. Let's see how that turns out for the next.
We're sure you'll be at it and at your well-being this way. And yeah, I think, speaking as a professional myself, there's nothing more affirming than a vulnerable leader. It makes it a safe place for everybody and lets everybody be a more authentic version of themselves. So thank you so much for sharing that and putting it out there today for all of us. We have some hands from the audience already up for questions. So Sneha, why don't you go ahead, ask your question first? And please call out who you'd like to ask. And since we have limited time, if you could choose one leader, and then, we could give others a chance to ask also.
Yeah, thank you, Shivani, and thank you, Praveen sir and Sunena ma'am, for sharing such insightful, perspective with us throughout the session. I want to ask my question from Praveen sir. So, what is the right way to measure like when we start on the path to psychological safety, what is the right way to measure what is the current status, how psychologically safe employees feel? Is there a tool, or is it just the sense of it? Do you literally go and ask them over FGDs?
Uh, Maybe I think two, three things. One, of course, Sneha, first of all, thanks. And I think no harm in starting with something dipstick. Dipstick could be one of the, best way where you can get the pulse of the organization. And I think we as a HR or, organization, we keep doing it on a quarterly, half-yearly basis. We do it internally. We also get it done through external third-party agencies who help you with the kind of, inputs around what you said. So I think that could be one of the things. The second could be the data speaks volume. So maybe your data of the organization, how you are performing in terms of the business outcome or in the HR matrices, maybe that will also give you a lot of indication in terms of how we are doing, on in terms of the uh, employee engagement, and that has various things, whether we are providing them best of the roles, best of the opportunities, whether we are doing better for the people in terms of their compensation, performance, so on and so forth. We all are HR folks and business people. We know various parameters, but I think there are ways, and probably in today's world, a lot of tools and techniques which has come up. For example, I keep reading about Infidos and like organization which keep telling you on a daily basis कि आपके लोगों का मूड कैसा है. They will give you some kind of, what do you call that, अंग्रेजी इंग्लिश में क्या होता है, इमोजीज आते हैं, वो आपको,
Moodometers, yeah.
हाँ, वो मीटर आते हैं और आपको बता देते हैं कि टुडे X% of your people are happy and X% of people are not so happy. So maybe there are new age, new ways of working available, but I think dipstick, pulse survey, continuously check on the shop floor, and maybe I think I will give a lot of importance since I come from manufacturing setup, natural resources. Going to ground is very important for managers, leader, HR team, getting the pulse of the people, how they are feeling. I think that can give you tremendous inputs, Sneha.
Got it, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Sunana, I hope it's okay. You want to add anything, Sunana?
No, it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect.
We have time for one more question. Deepika M has posted a question on chat. Deepika, you can unmute yourself and ask the question, and do call out which one of the leaders you want to answer the question.
So maybe I'll go with Praveen because I get to hear Sunana every day because I report into her. So Praveen, how do you encourage, or how do you destigmatize mental health issues and encourage employees seek help?
See, it's a very sensitive topic sometimes, and I think Sunana did cover that in the entire our discussion. And we all noticed during COVID time also that you need to have some structured platform where people can directly connect. They can share transparently with some kind of expert what kind of help support they need. Sometimes they may not be comfortable, making their point openly. So I think you need to have a kind of expert. In between who can help you. There are many organizations, many business partners, I would call it, they are available to support you in the organization. So maybe it's always good, to my mind, few things you should outsource, few things you should take help of the business partner, and they will give you best of the result, and even people would be very comfortable talking to them, getting problem resolved. For example, we tied up with Apollo Hospital during COVID time. They were available 24/7 for all the people. Whatever support they needed, they will directly get in touch with them. हमारे पास खाली एक MIS आती थी कि बस ये नंबर है, ये ऐसे ऐसे हो रहा है करके. But everything was getting resolved. So our intention was our people should get support, and they should get guidance. This is what was the ultimate aim we had. Maybe I'm just trying to cover it in a very short. Hope it's okay.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Praveen.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much to Sunena and Praveen for making time for this conversation this afternoon. Some of the things that I am taking away from this conversation is about before design comes intent. If the leadership intent is in place, if the heart is in the right place, then that gives the impetus to drive programs and create programs which are really meaningful. I'm also taking away how well-being is so directly connected to the meaning we derive out of work. So if we can foster that, if we can create an environment which is easier to navigate in terms of fulfilling our aspirations and support the employee community with achieving their aspirations, then a lot of the employee well-being comes from just that. And third, finally, the crucial roles that managers and leaders play in terms of showing up with authenticity, vulnerability, with a willingness to let their teams find their way, supporting them, having their back, and how that goes such a long way in ensuring psychological safety and well-being across the organization. I think these are lessons for all of us to learn and hopefully implement in our respective organizations. So thank you so much, Praveen and Sunena, for your time today. It's been a very, very enlightening discussion for all of us. And thank you to the wonderful audience who was so engaged, asked such provocative questions. Hope you enjoy more such discussions that we bring to you from NHRDN. And if you're somebody who wants to look at advancing their careers through further HR courses, certifications, or just getting to engage with a really bright HR community, then you may want to consider becoming a part of NHRDN. With that, thank you so much for your time. Wishing you all a great Friday afternoon, evening, and a great weekend ahead. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you so much. Lovely to meet everyone.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Sunena. Thank you, Shivani.
Thank you.
Thanks, NHRD. Thank you.